Welcome to Little City Big Voices, a podcast where we share the real stories of those who love, power, and champion children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental health challenges. These are the voices of a community united by compassion, driven by purpose, and deeply committed to creating a world where everyone belongs. I am your host, Rich Bobby, CEO of Little City. Little City's vision is to provide a place where everyone can feel included in their community, have someone they can call a friend, and continuously learn and build new skills. This is our episode 5 of Little City Big Voices, and I'm very excited to share this hot topic about IDD Navigator, a new resource for Illinois families navigating the services landscape for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I'm delighted to have our guest speaker, who is the mastermind behind this podcast, as well as really the creator of IDD Navigator, and that is Ann Morris, Chief of Communications and External Affairs for Little City, and one of our creators of IDD Navigator. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Rich. It's great to be here.
All right, Ann. You know how the drill goes. Ann is the creator of this podcast, so I just want to be transparent on that. So she's done an amazing job on the back end of making sure that this is created efficiently and effectively, and that our message is carried out to all of our supporters. That said, Ann, can you tell us about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rich. I came to Little City about 2 years ago. I've just celebrated my 2-year anniversary. And before that, I was in the for-profit business for my entire career before I came to Little City. I never worked at a nonprofit before. And I worked mostly in the marketing agency business as well as with a leadership consulting firm before I came here. And I don't have any personal connections to people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, or I didn't before I came here. And I just fell in love with the mission. The job kind of came across my transom, and I was very intrigued and came out to learn more and saw our beautiful 56-acre campus out here in Palatine, and met some of the people, including the people we serve, and I just fell in love with the mission.
So you're in corporate America, you ran your own business,
Right.
and you land a job at Little City, and you first order of business, you're tasked with creating a statewide resource for all the families in Illinois who have loved ones with IDD.
Right.
Okay. What was that like? You come in the door, welcome to Little City, and here you go. Here's a project for you.
Yes, the idea was definitely incubated here at Little City. It was presented to me, as you say, very early on in my tenure here as something that was desired, and not just from Little City, but across the state, that there was really a gap in information for people who were looking to navigate the landscape of services for their loved ones with IDD. We originally thought of creating a portal, which would have been a little bit different project, but we ultimately decided that it should be a central free online resource for parents, families, self-advocates, people who themselves have disabilities, who may be looking for services, whether they be residential, recreational, arts, day programs, foster care and adoption, all of those above, and really was charged with creating this resource. So we set about with research as our first step, of course.
And what did that research look like?
Again, as you pointed out, I was brand new to the IDD landscape. It was a tall order for me to kind of get my arms around this. It is a very complex world, as you well know. You've been in it for many years, and it was all new to me. So I did a lot of my own reading and understanding and reading people's stories and listening to families talk about their struggles and listening to our DSPs, our direct support professionals, talk about their challenges and opportunities in serving this population. What we ultimately did was set about to get funding for the project initially because we knew that it couldn't come out of Little City's budget because our budget is dedicated to serving the people that we serve here. We approached the Coleman Foundation for funding, and they gave us a first round of funding to start developing the idea. They were very enthusiastic about a central resource that would serve the entire state and not be not be just focused on Little City, but just a statewide resource. We had our first year of funding, and with that, we were able to hire an intern who spent an entire summer. She created an enormous spreadsheet. It had about 300 providers on it to start, and it has since grown to about 550. We've continued to research and add categories. We've heard from families through focus groups and others who've looked at this initial version of the site, telling us you need to add medical or dental or transportation or different kinds of categories that we've added on as we've gone.
So I want to pause here and just go back to something you said, because I think we need to absolutely take a moment to thank the Coleman Foundation,
Absolutely.
because without the Coleman Foundation, this project would not be possible, period. Would you
Absolutely.
agree, Ann?
Thank you, Rich. Totally. We since after that first round of funding, we went back to them for a second round of funding because we ultimately realized that this was a bigger beast than we thought it might be to start. And so we needed additional funding, not only to really finalize and refine the site and make it as robust as possible, but also to launch a large statewide advertising and marketing campaign to get the word out to both providers as well as families across the state, including rural areas where we'll be doing a multi-channel marketing campaign that has been made possible by the Coleman Foundation. We absolutely thank them for their support and making it possible.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Coleman Foundation. To backtrack on some of the story you were sharing, and I know as provider, Little City being one of many providers across the state of Illinois and, of course, across the nation. What we often found is that families were kind of, drugged through the mud, having to walk through a forest and trying to figure out, where do I even start? How do I even begin a process? What are the steps in this process? We would talk about this for years, just like there needs to be some sort of central resource hub for families. So that way it's a one stop shop where they can get the information. Not necessarily needs to be a portal, but at least a free resource for families to get started. And here you come in. This idea is pitched. We have the support of the Coleman Foundation, and you took your marketing and communications background from the corporate America and Little Cities culture, and you see the power that our team provides those we support, and you caught on quickly. You instantly locked in and saw the need yourself. And not only that, you could have easily, in most cases, just said, you know what, this is too much of a project. I city, but you doubled down, Ann, and you said, no, 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 like this is going to be big and I want to see this through. And through that, within a couple years, it's launched. It's live
Right.
now. In that, what was it that you found a challenge going through this process of just learning about the system as it existed prior to this IDD Navigator resource?
So you talked about a maze, and that's really what it felt like when I first came here. How do I personally, in my job, navigate through this maze of how this system works, right? It is very complex, and I could not even today claim to understand it all. But I could only imagine with my professional training and education, I could learn it, right? But I could only imagine what everyday working families might be facing in terms of, and they have a much more personal stake in trying to navigate that maze. So I think the challenge, as you asked about, was figuring out how do we corral all of that. Right. Before IDD Navigator, families were going to many disparate websites that the state provides, that they do provide information. I mean, there's no mistaking that. It was just a way of corralling it all in one place and making it. I think the guts of the site I talk about is this resource index where people can put a very detailed search into it. Say they're looking for a 3-year-old who has been diagnosed with autism and they're looking for early childhood therapies. They can put that into a search on the site, and that can lead them to some resources in their area. They can also filter that by the area of the state they're in, the region of the state they're in. We believe that we've made it so much easier for families who are looking for, where do I even start? And the other feature on the site that helps with that is literally a get started page. If you can't even deal with that filter, go to the get started page because it tells you right off the bat, you have to find your independent service coordinator. That's your first step. Here's how to do it. Here are the steps. Here's a button that takes you to the Illinois locator for your ISC in your area. We're trying to make it intuitive and user friendly as possible for anyone at any education level, anyone who it knows how to use a website to basically be able to find what they're looking for.
That's so amazing. One thing you referenced is ISC.
Right.
That brings me to there's an acronyms
Oh,
section
yes.
on the website. So if someone doesn't know what ISC is, individual service coordinator, we're very acronym heavy in our industry and the work that we do. And you want to talk a little bit about the acronyms?
Yes. So, in fact, that should have been my answer when you asked, what was your biggest challenge when you came to work here? It was acronyms. Oh my gosh. I was just drowning in acronyms when I first got here. And I was, what does this mean? What does that mean? But we do have a very robust list of acronyms that are commonly used in our field and that parents will probably encounter the minute they enter this landscape. And so we tried to make it easy again for them to just plug in an acronym they heard and they don't know what it means. And they could just plug that in, or they can look through an alphabetized list, or they can download a PDF, a list they can put on their bulletin board. So then when they're on the phone with Social Security, or they're on the phone with Medicaid, or they're on the phone with someone at the state, they can interpret what is being thrown at them in terms of all the acronyms. So I think it's a very helpful resource.
Yeah, it's excellent. If you could go back now through the process, because one could say, well, and you came on board, you don't know much about the site, which I will say you're the creator and does deserve 100% of the credit of creating this. Of course, with working with developers, you were the driver of this. I have to ask, did you get input from anybody
Oh, yes,
in the creation of
absolutely.
this?
No, it was definitely not done in a vacuum. Any good leader surrounds themselves with knowledgeable people. I got as much as I could from colleagues here at Little City who explained how the ISC process works, what the puns list is, and who helped educate me on all of that. And of course, we talked with families. We had focus groups with families across the state. We also talked with ISCs themselves about their end of it. What is it that they would want families to know about how to find their IC or how to work with their case manager. We talked with our advocacy organizations that we work with every day. That is the IRF, Illinois Association of Rehabilitation Facilities, the ARC of Illinois, Anchor, the Illinois chapter of Anchor. We talked to all of our advocacy organizations about what do they think is important for families, because of course they represent families in Illinois. So we did as much as we could to educate ourselves on what should be in the site. And as you mentioned, we worked with an outstanding web developer to actually put the design and the development of the site together.
Great. So this was a multi-level discussion. You had multiple meetings with families, other providers, and the individual service coordinator. That is the first point of contact for a family who's trying to access services in Illinois. So that's why it's such a critical group that you spoke with as well. So
Yes,
you
absolutely.
spoke from providers to the whole gamut of services, and
Yes.
most importantly, families.
We did a provider survey as well. So we actually sent out like a survey monkey to providers, asking them what would they like to see? What would they like families to see on the site about service providers?
So here we are. It's just launched. I have to believe that there's families wondering, hey, what is it we're talking about here when we say IDD Navigator? We're talking about a website. So you want to share the website and
Yes.
share a little bit like where you would recommend they start on that website?
Absolutely. So the website is iddnavigator.org. You can go to that anytime on any browser, and it is a free, first of its kind public tool for families who are seeking services for the intellectually and developmentally disabled population. And where the homepage, if you go right to iddnavigator.org, you will see a homepage that lays out the key features of the site. First key feature is the resource index. That's what I talked about earlier when I talked about the guts of the site. That's where you can really do a very fine-tuned, filtered search for what you're looking for, depending on the service, even the age of the individual, the region you are in Illinois, whether you're looking for a specific type of service, etc. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the homepage, you will find a wonderful demo video that will take you right through exactly how to use the site. There's also a Get Started guide, which I mentioned earlier. We have a government system navigation section where you can figure out how to navigate through the various government agencies that you may need to encounter along the way. I will point out in that section, there's a very detailed explanation of some of the things I mentioned, like what is an ISC? What's the PUNS list? For those who don't know, it's the prioritization of urgency of need for services. That is the waiting list that people get on when they're looking for these types of services. There are right about 16,000 people in Illinois who are on the waiting list for and on that PUNS waiting list for services. And that's where IDD Navigator comes in super handy because if you're on the PUNS list and you're waiting for state funded or Medicaid waiver service funded services, you can still access services through the site if you're in a waiting game and you're looking for something for your loved one to do. Um, the other couple of features on the site I'd like to point out is we have multi-language support. It's translated right now, I believe, into 8 different languages. We are really pleased with that because we know that our population in Illinois is very diverse and that we want to be able for all populations to be able to access the site in their language. And if you don't see a language on there you'd like to see, let me know. We can add one. We also have an accessibility widget. It's a little circle at the bottom right of the page on the website, on any page on the site. And if you click on that, you'll find a wide variety of ways to use the site if you have a disability. If you need a seizure safe profile, if you need a different color contrast, if you are using a screen reader because you're visually impaired, those are all things that are also available on the site.
It is very robust, and I will say when you've presented the most recent version of it, this is going to be an evolving site for sure. I was blown away on how simple it is, because that's the key, the simplicity, but also how easy it is to navigate from page to page. Because even when you go to like the main page, as you were sharing, it's very clear where do you go next. There's some intuitiveness to it that I know that can be complicated going, especially on certain state pages that have multiple links, multiple programs and services that they're offering, and this really helps condense it to the world of IDD.
Exactly. Yes.
So, as this is launched, I think this is one of those resources where we want to get the word out. So, if you're a listener of this podcast, what would you ask that they do to get the word out about this resource for families?
Right. Well, I guess it would depend on the audience. I think if you're a provider and you're listening, we do have a provider page on the site where you can, if you are not already listed on the site and you want to be, you can sign up. You can tell us exactly what areas of your own website you want us to feature. You can also make changes if you see something on your particular presence on our site that needs to be corrected, you can do that. If you are a parent or a caregiver and you want to get the word out, you can share that iddnavigator.org link with anybody you come across who might be interested in finding out more about IDD Navigator. Also on the provider page, there's a provider toolkit. Essentially, you can pull up social media posts. I think there's a flyer or a poster in the kit where you can get the word out to your own populations about the site.
Great, great. We're embarking on a major marketing campaign across the entire state of Illinois. You want to share some of the methods that we're doing,
Yes.
or I'd say you're doing?
Yes. Well, as we say, it's a multi-channel campaign. So we are working with a couple of agencies that are helping us with that. It's not a solo campaign, but we are, of course, going to be already doing some very robust social media posting. We shared things like the governor of Illinois proclaimed August of 2025 to be IDD Navigator Month. We shared that on social. We're also a nominee for a Chicago Innovation Award, and we're crossing our fingers that maybe we'll get that as well. Social media for sure. We'll be doing digital advertising. So that's across LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit. We'll be doing things like out of home advertising. So that means in the ad biz, that's a kind of an ad term, but what that means is billboards and transit cards, which means when you're at a bus station, you might see an ad. We have a blog, we have a newsletter that's going out, I believe, next week, our monthly newsletter.
What about
Right.
rural areas? Because I know in Illinois, there's often tension with, whether it be city of Chicago, the surrounding suburbs, and the central southern parts of Illinois. And I know oftentimes it seems like in rural communities, they can easily get the short end of the stick when it comes to resources simply because of just fewer population. So
Yes.
how are we getting the word out to rural
Yeah, I
counties?
mean, we've made a concerted effort to avoid the us and them thing with Chicago and the rest of the state. This is not just a Chicago effort at all. This is throughout the state. And so the out of home that I mentioned, the billboards will be one way that we will be reaching people in rural areas. We are also doing a PR campaign. So I've already done a radio interview, for example, with a Champaign station, disability show. We're going to be doing more of that type of thing, also getting things out in the newspapers in the rural areas, which people still read, and digital advertising as well. So anybody across the state who's on Facebook is probably going to see an ad for Instagram and you name it. We're just trying to reach every corner of the state we can with the right types of media that work to reach those populations.
That's great. That's excellent. I would say too, because I know you would agree with this, Anne, that if there's feedback that people will have about the site itself, you're always open to getting feedback because
Yes.
we are just at the beginning of stages of launching it. So there's always room for improvement. The site may not be perfect, and it's certainly not designed to solve a family's challenge, so to speak, but rather giving them access to information. Do you agree?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, it really serves as a hub of information. So it is not about service delivery outcomes in any way, but really meant to be a service for information. And you mentioned contacting us. There is a contact us section on the site. So if you do have comments or you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can go through that contact us page on the site, or you can email us at info@iddnavigator.org.
Great, great. So, Anne, what are your hopes for this IDD Navigator for the future?
Well, I'm so excited. I mean, I'm just excited that it's here and it's launched, and I've already heard from various people of ideas they have for ways we can even make it better. So I'm open to all of that. I'm excited about the possibilities that we can go with year 3, year 4, and beyond. We want it to be. I always say with website creation, because I have created many websites in the course of my career, they are not one and done. Websites are living, breathing things. They continue to evolve as time goes on, as needs change, as new services become available, et cetera. We are excited about continuing to make the service directory as robust as it can be and adding maybe some fun future ideas like maybe a chat bot or a private or a chat function where a family could actually interact with someone in seeking services, or a family support forum where families could go on and talk with each other about their challenges in trying to find services for their loved one. We could even do things like a zip code sorter. Now, I'm not making any promises, but things that we're looking to do in the future will involve, additional funding, of course. There just sort of is an endless amount of things we could continue to do to make it better and to get the word out as well. So podcasts, webinars, maybe down the road, who knows?
Great, great. And I want to make note of it just so families who have children, again, this is not a portal to access services for that, but rather there is a separate portal for that called Beacon that's operated by the state of Illinois. And this site will give families information on how to access that site.
When in the course of developing the site, we've talked to state leaders as well. We've had great input from them too in terms of how can we dovetail with each other and what the state is doing and what we are doing with this site. Beacon is a great place to go if you're looking for mental health support for your child.
Yeah, and to actually access the services.
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Anne. We just so appreciate your leadership, your ability to deliver. Because it's one thing to talk about an idea, which we've talked about this idea for, it feels like decades, at least from my perspective. There's just been so much talk. It's one thing to have a great idea, but it's another thing to absolutely execute on that idea. And that is what you did. You executed on an idea. It's now live. Yes, it could always be improved. At the same time, it's very robust, even for the launch itself. So thank you, Anne. Thank you for joining this podcast. Your voice is big, Anne. And at Little City, every voice matters, and your story helps shape a more compassionate and inclusive world. Stay tuned for more voices, more stories, and more meaning. Visit us at our website at littlecity.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We're always looking for others to join our mission and share their time, talent, and treasure. Thank you for listening to Little City, Big Voices.
Little City is a nonprofit, for-purpose organization operating for more than 65 years, serving children and adults with autism, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and those experiencing mental health challenges. We offer services in Chicago and the surrounding suburbs, with our main service area located in Palatine, Illinois. We provide residential living arrangement services for children and adults, a therapeutic day school, adult community enrichment and day services, recreational services including amazing arts, horticulture, and special recreation services, employment services, foster care and adoption, and community mental health services. Visit littlecity.org for more information.